tonight. Now I'm going to start with a bold claim, and that claim is something that I was quoted in Harvard Business Review a few years back. More than education, more than experience, more than training, it is resilience that determines who succeeds and who fails. I'll continue. Who is life satisfied, who is not? Who is happier, and who is less so? Now that's a bold claim, but it's supported by literally thousands of studies that have been done over the last 30 years at the University of Pennsylvania and worldwide. And that's what we're going to try to give you a chance to take for a little bit of a test drive this evening. Because I hate to make claims and then walk away. We'll let you guys decide. But before I go much further, I'd like to talk about what resilience is not, at least in our model. How many do not recognize these characters? Of course, Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner. I just want to tell you a story that will indicate to you just how brilliant I am, because I really do want you to like me even more than I know you already do. I used to get up every Saturday morning when these were first-run cartoons to see, ready, here it comes, to see what was going to happen that week. Well, we all know what happens, right? The Roadrunner outruns the Coyote. The Coyote runs into a tunnel, gets hit by an oncoming train, falls off a cliff and goes splat. Gets blown up by his own Acme bomb. Now, what I want to know is how many times do you have to be hit in the head with your own anvil to say, screw this, I'm going to KFC, let somebody else get the Roadrunner. But seriously, this is not resilience. This is blind persistence, and it has very serious downsides. Now, I think a good working definition of resilience is the intelligent deployment of resources in our lives, in our work, in the intersection of the two. One thing that we know is that we have less and less and less to do more and more and more with, am I right? Yeah. So with limited resources, the important thing is to put them where they're going to do the most good. Now what I see happening in corporate America, because we work with giant companies, we also work with small companies, but particularly in big companies, we see people just beating their heads against problems over which they have little or no control. That's frankly why many of us left corporate America, because we got frustrated, right? But at times, we also give up too soon. We fail to see the leverage that exists at the time that we are trying to solve a problem. In some ways, isn't this kind of like the Serenity Prayer? How many people know the Serenity Prayer? Who's willing to say it out loud for me? So I can get a drink of water. Absolutely. And there it is. Thank you so much. If I had $1, I would give you $1. We need the serenity to accept the things we cannot change. We need courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I'm going to maintain that it's this piece that's in red, this wisdom bit, that gets us in trouble, because often we think we can fix something that we cannot, and often we quit problem solving too early when in fact there is something to be done. And that's where we're going with this thing that we call resilience. Okay, what I'd like you to do is turn to page 9 of your handout. I'd like you to just imagine yourself, vividly imagine yourself in this scenario, and I'm going to read it out loud. You've been putting in long hours on your business. Hands-on organizing, sales calls, social networking, web follow-ups, etc. You get home at the end of a particularly tough week, I'm going to say, and the end of a tough day within that week, and your spouse or significant other complains, you're a workaholic, and you need to make the relationship more of a priority. Now, for any of you who don't have a spouse or a significant other, I ask you to get very creative. Just be a player in this. Just go off in your mind, pretend the cat is your lover, whatever it happens to be. And here's the important thing. Here's the important thing. Yeah, it is a little weird. I understand. You know what? At National, you'll totally find out how weird I can be. This is nothing. All right. So, here's what I want you to do. Vividly imagine yourself in that situation, and then I want to know, in the immediate wake of hearing this, what the first things are that go through your head, like ticker tape. For those of you too young to know what ticker tape is, crawl at the bottom of the CNN screen, sort of like the nya that's going on in your head. I'd like you to try to capture verbatim. What are you thinking, and then what do you feel, and what would you do in that moment? I'd like you to just take a minute and jot down some notes about that. When you're done, I'd like you to turn to the 2 or 3 or 4 people around you, whatever's comfortable, and just talk about it and compare notes for a minute or two, and then we'll come back. And if anybody has any questions at all, just raise your hand. I will come running. Thank you. I just want to give you guys a sense, how many people, by a show of hands, think they may have already found what I call their pet emotion? The emotion they tend to go to. Fantastic. That's so great. Good for you guys. Give yourselves a hand. Yay. Thank you. I'm sorry, that was for you. Okay. Now, what I wanted to show you is on page 10 of your handout, you have this very same chart, but in tabular form. This, I think, is maybe one of the most valuable takeaways from this class. Why? Because it's going to give you some leverage, not just with your own behavior, but with the behavior of others. I'm going to argue that you can use this chart to do a better job interacting with your children, your spouse or significant other, your family, other family members, and your customers. Can anyone in the room, and feel free to just raise your hand and share a little bit, tell me how they think they can use this chart or this knowledge to do what I just said, to do a better job understanding and interacting with. Yes, in the back.
I identified my daughter, who's going to be 22, as number 2, the future threat anxiety.
Okay.
Everything.
All right.
You know, everything. What if? What if? Well, this it probably won't happen. But what if it does? Okay. Wish I had a nickel. Okay. Every time I heard that. So what I'm thinking is, and maybe I'm wrong, but do I try to neutralize the threat? You know, try to, you know, say, well, even if that happens, you'll get through it. Is that how I would handle that kind of thing?
Well, first let me say, before I directly answer that question, you are spot on in the way I'd like to see you use this chart.
Okay.
Because, and that's great, and I'll answer your question
I'm going to talk to her
in a
like an hour, so I need this.
I will also tell you that anxiety is a very, very difficult emotion to unhook and unhinge.
Yeah.
Because once we, and I put myself back, once we become anxious, our thinking gets really fuzzy, and we're off in worst case, and it's hard to get through it. Now, I'll tell you what you don't want to do. If you're an anger person and you have anxiety people working for you, don't tell them to stop whining. Do not look at them and say, what the hell is wrong with you? Just man up, will you? Come on.
Buck up. That doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. But here's the point. We cannot read the minds of our kids or our customers, but we can certainly read their emotions, can't we? We can see the downcast of sadness or depression. We can see the hyperactivity and the worried face of anxiety. We can see the flush of anger. You can see these things. Now that you know what kinds of thinking are leading to the thoughts, leading to the emotions, you no longer have to try to deal with the emotion. I would say, go back to the thinking. If somebody comes at you angry, what do we know about them now? If somebody's angry in your presence, what do you know about them? Anybody? They believe that you or someone has violated their rights. What I would say to that person is, oh, don't be so angry. What? Now, see, anger makes me very anxious. But I would say, well, obviously you believe that I or someone or circumstances or something violated your rights. Tell me what's going on. And immediately you're in problem-solving mode. Now, anxiety is a little different because whether or not your right's been violated is yes or no. Whether or not that really bad thing is going to happen is not binary because it hasn't happened yet. It's probabilistic.
Right.
And so I would encourage you to read up on the chapter on a skill called putting it in perspective.
Oh, I use that all the time.
Yes.
I say those words.
Yes. Look at it. The skill itself is a little tedious to learn, but you can shortcut it. Because basically what you're doing is you're helping the person, because they're telling you worst case.
Yeah.
You want to try to, as a fun exercise, get them to come up with equally probable or improbable best case.
Yeah.
And then move to most likely. Because what happens to people with a lot of anxiety is we tend to wind up wasting a lot of time on low probability outcomes. And energy.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So, really important stuff. And I encourage you to use it with your clients. If you have a client who's anxious, I'll bet you see a lot of anxious clients. You've got to minimize the risk to them. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. They might be embarrassed. I'd like to just close by reminding you that training and learning doesn't end or shouldn't end at the end of a session like this. There's so much more that you can do. But here's sort of a quick recipe for results. Learn the emotion that derails you, the one that gets you the most. Hopefully, many of you already have that. Know what the emotion radar is, the thinking it leads to. When the emotion happens, don't trust the thinking. Hold it as a theory to be tested. Come up with evidence-based alternatives. Identify one or two icebergs that you have learned get in your way. And either melt, steer around them, or embrace them. And to the extent that you want to do more work, read The Resilience Factor. I don't know anyone except Andrew's mother who's ever read it cover to cover, but I'm not sure she ever really has. But it's a fabulous reference. Ladies and gentlemen, I so thank you for your time and attention tonight. Thank you so much. And I